The human rights situation in Iran has been in a crisis, particularly since 2009. One of the most disturbing developments in Iran year after year for the past decade almost has been the huge number of executions. In 2012, at least 500 people were hanged, and even hundreds of them were carried out in secret. We're also seeing a huge increase in the number of cruel and inhumane punishments, such as flogging and amputations. In addition, we are witnessing an absolute lack of freedoms of expression, association, and assembly. We have at least 500 prominent prisoners of conscience, which include leading members of various social movements, such as the student movement, women's rights movement, legal profession, journalists, labor union, and activists who are behind bars simply because they have organized and been critical of government policies. Brazil, as an emerging power, should have a very principled approach in defending human rights and being a major power in promoting human rights at the international level. This becomes even more critical when Brazil is one of the few powers that have good relationships with a country like Iran. They have to use that relationship to impress on the Iranian government that their widespread violations of human rights are not acceptable, and they can have a very positive impact. Iran will not respond to international pressures as long as on human rights issue as long as it comes only from Western powers such as US and EU. Iran will only respond when countries like Brazil have more of a public profile on this issue, and that will make it much more difficult for Iran's foreign policy to justify its domestic actions on the international front. The election process in the Islamic Republic, the way it is instituted, is neither free or fair, and that has to do with even before the election day. We're not talking about vote counting or citizens' right to vote. We're talking about the right to be a candidate. The regime has put laws into place, and certain bodies within institutions within the regime have interpreted those laws that gives them the right to decide who can be a candidate. As a result, never a candidate who is not in political alignment with current powers can become a candidate. So, for example, we have never had a secular candidate or a candidate who advocates separation of religion and politics. They have no right whatsoever to be in the elections. And nonetheless, we are seeing a lot of tensions build up, a lot of infighting, particularly coming from President Ahmadinejad's supporters. He seems to be wanting to continue holding power over the executive branch by having his deputy become president, but the supreme leader does not seem to be wanting that to happen. That would be the most interesting thing. Basically, would Ahmadinejad go quietly, or is he going to really rock the boat and fight the supreme leader to a level that there could be possible disturbances again? None of the candidates at the moment have any commitment to improving human rights. Actually, none of them have even uttered the phrase human rights, let alone define a policy of how they're going to engage in improving the situation. So unless there is some major changes happening in the next month or so before the election, I don't think the candidates or the eventual president himself is going to have much of a difference. But the election process, the infighting, may open up space for activists to have some breathing room and bring the issue to the forefront again.